Good afternoon and welcome to another segment of Gold FM Speak Your Mind. We're in studio this week. We're joined in studio this week by Commission Member for Electoral Commission, Father David Arms. Welcome, Father David Arms, and thank you so much for being with us on the show today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and hope I can help out with things that people may want to know about the elections, especially about the counting.
Most definitely. Now, let's just get straight into it. My first question for you today is, would you be able to explain the different roles between the Elections Office and the Electoral Commission?
Well, the Elections Office, you might say, is the executive arm that does all the work. There, people in the Elections Office are full-time workers. The Election Commission is like a board. We work part-time, but we have to have the ultimate responsibility for running free and fair elections.
Right, and there's 7 of you on the board, including the chairman.
That's correct.
And all 7 of you, you explained earlier that you have different roles, specific roles that you play within the on the board. So your role on the board is?
Well, my role on the commission is, in particular, looking at the electoral procedures, how the elections actually operate, the methods for counting, methods for polling, and looking at those sort of details.
Right.
And others have their own portfolios, but when it comes to decision making, we act as a commission and make those decisions together.
Okay. Okay. So, can you please give us an overview of how the votes will be counted?
There will be 3 stages to the counting. The counting will actually begin right after polling ceases at 6 p.m. on polling day. The first stage of the counting is actually conducted by the clerks at the polling station. They change hats, as it were. Instead of becoming polling clerks, they're now becoming counting clerks. And the training covers not only what they do when people are coming right throughout the day, but they're also trained as how this count will be conducted. So they begin that immediately after the polling stops. It stops at 6 p.m., except that if there's somebody in the queue at 6 p.m., they will be allowed to, the queue will be allowed to move until the queue finishes, and then the counting will begin.
And since the polling stations close at 6 p.m., what time does the polling station open all across Fiji? What's the starting time for? The
starting time is 7:30 a.m. in the morning.
Right.
And it runs right through to 6 p.m.
Till 6 p.m.
And then it goes on. The actual counting, we cannot be sure, of course, for any polling station how long it will take.
Okay.
One thing, some polling stations may have quite a low number of votes, 100 or so. The maximum has been set at about 500. So obviously, counting 500 votes will take a rather longer time than the 100. But in trying this out, doing trial counts, it has taken, the smaller ones could take an hour, could take between 1 hour and 2 hours. But of course, there's always a chance of a hitch. If something is wrong, then they may have to go back and recount, and so it could even go beyond 2 hours. But
this is counting for all of the votes?
For counting, no, this is for counting for each polling station.
Okay.
But each polling station has to take their votes and count them. It counts how many votes each candidate of the about, say, 350 candidates that are likely to be, between 350 and 400 perhaps. It has to count how many votes each of those candidates has.
Will the total for each party be given at each polling station, or will the counts be done and then transferred to the main Suva office?
No, you're correct. It will go to the Suva office. At the polling station, that first stage of counting will count only the votes for each candidate. They will not bother adding them up for the party, and not because it's not important, but because it will take time, and it's easier to do that when they have the votes accumulated in the central tallying centre.
Okay.
So that's the second stage of the vote, is in that tallying centre. And the third stage is what the Electoral Commission does at the end, is allocate the seats.
Allocating of the seats. Okay, then. How will the results be sent into the tallying centre in Suva?
There could be various means. It will depend actually upon the particular polling station, what's available.
Okay.
They may be able to be faxed in, they may be able to be emailed in, or they may simply have to be telephoned in. It'll be a long telephone call, but still, that may be the way. But they will be sent in. But those results which I'm referring to are the provisional results.
Okay.
Because it's thought in the public interest that it would be good to have provisional results so that in the tallying centre they can get these results in quickly and give some idea as to how the vote is going. However, the definitive results have to wait for the original results tally, and that has got to be sent by a special tamper-evident envelope that has to come physically to the tallying centre before the real official count can begin. So one has to get this 1,987 approx polling centres, polling stations, and has to get all those 1,987 result sheets back in,
Right.
and add those that'll be for the final count. But on the first night, they hope to have some sort of provisional figures for everybody.
Okay, so when the announcement is made for each total from all the polling stations, is there a particular person who will be in charge from each polling station to oversee this?
Every polling station has a presiding officer, and that person is the one who leads the team, and he or she, I should say, and that person also will, at the result, at the end, will pin up the results for that polling centre at the polling station
So the
itself.
official word for each polling station, the official result from each polling station can only be made by the presiding officer.
Yes, he is the one who has to sign off on the final result.
Okay.
And there are witnesses there, but he is the man in charge, or woman. And at the end, he will put one copy of the result sheet outside the polling station for anybody to view. And most people probably will not be that interested in a particular polling station, really, but people may.
Right.
But certainly party agents will be very interested and will probably want to collect those, make copies of those, or take the information back to their parties.
Okay, so then the results will be public information if he's putting it up on the board. So that means
correct.
anyone who is interested can go to the polling stations. They can even wait all night if need be, just to see the results.
Yes.
Okay. Okay then. How do we know the number of? Sorry, I've just been told that we have run out of time for our first segment. We're going to come right back after this break. Welcome back to Gold FM's Speak Your Mind segment. We're in studio today with the Commission Member for Electoral Commission, Father David Arms. So, Father Arms, we're going now into our next question. The question is, how do we know the number of votes gained by a party since voters are voting for individual candidates?
At the polling stations, the results put up will actually only show the results for each candidate. In order to save time, the members of the polling station will not actually compute just how many votes each party has gained, but political agents in particular, or anybody looking at the result sheet at the polling station, by adding up the votes for members of a particular party, can find out how many votes each party has gained. However, the real place where that figure will be publicly done will be at the central tallying centre. When all the result sheets have as they come in, they will be recorded, of course, but there will be a progressive tally, so that as each polling station sends in their results, the results for this candidate will be so much, then the next one comes in, that will go up, and so on and go up. And at the same time, there will be a record of how many votes for each party. so that as, say, all the members of, say, 50 members of a party, as their votes come in from one polling station, their figures will go up, but then also the total figures of the party will be recorded, and that will keep increasing as well until we have, at the end of the whole tally, the full number of votes gained by each candidate and the full number of votes gained by each party. And it is very important, actually, for voters to remember that when they are voting, they must, of course, know the number of their candidate, but they must also know that they're voting for a party as well, unless, of course, they're voting for an independent candidate.
Now we're going into that question I was wanting to ask you as well. Some people have expressed confusion with regards to how they are going to go about voting. They've compared the new voting format to that of a Sudoku puzzle because there's so many numbers on it. But I do believe they will be given 2 sheets when they enter the booth. Is that correct?
Well, they will be given a voter instruction booklet that will contain some instructions, but would also contain the national candidates list. That is the total list of all those candidates who are running.
Okay.
So they have that facility to help them to make their choice.
Okay.
That national candidates list does not, in fact, contain the party name, but of course that should be available from other sources. And it's quite important that people know their party name, because when they're voting, it is possible that they are voting for a certain candidate, and that candidate perhaps does not actually get in, but their vote has still counted for the party. That's an important point. So that previously, when you were in a constituency, you might vote for a party, but if that party lost, then not only was the candidate gone, but your vote counted nothing now for the party had lost. But now, if the candidate you want doesn't make it, nevertheless, your vote is counted towards the party, and so the number of seats gained by that party will have been influenced by your vote.
Okay. Who does the allocation of seats deciding which candidate goes into Parliament?
Well, that is a stage that the Electoral Commission does.
Comes in.
Yes.
Okay.
The Tallying Centre, and I should make this clear, it's a very obviously complex process, gathering in the votes from 1,987 polling stations, and putting each station has probably about 350, 400 candidates. And now, from many polling stations, quite a lot of the candidates will probably get no votes. If you've got 350 to 400 people running, and you've only got about 350, 400 in the polling coming to that polling station, to have all get a vote, they'd have to get one each, and that's obviously not going to happen.
No.
So that will simplify things a bit. Not all the candidates will feature on the result sheet of some polling stations. Nevertheless, they have to be there at least as having naught. That has to be recorded. So all those things will be added up together. And that also, as in the polling station, it's not quite clear either in the Tallying Centre how long the whole process will take.
Okay.
We would hope it would be done in 2 days. We'd really like to get it done in 2 days. It cannot be, the provisional results may be able to be given on the night or the following morning anyway, of how it's going. But the exact results as to how many seats exactly and how many and who those occupying those seats, that will have to wait for at least 2 days, and it could go as long as 4.
Okay.
If we wouldn't want it to go beyond that, that certainly is what we'd try not to go beyond, and we're certainly going to try for 2, but it will depend on what happens. If somehow in the middle of things there's some glitch or some mistake made and one has to go back, obviously that will delay things. And the important thing for the elections office, because they're the ones who will be conducting this, is that they'll be a bit slow perhaps, but they need to be deliberate. They're not going to be slow for sake of being slow, but they want to be careful, make sure that there are no mistakes and that it all comes out nice and clean.
Right. Okay. So so just confirming again for our listeners, the Electoral Commission will be in charge of overseeing the allocation of the seats in Parliament. Yes.
Well, that will come after the elections office has accumulated all the results. So when they've got all that done, they have the results for every single candidate complete and the results for all the parties. then that is given to the Electoral Commission to do the next stage of allocating the seats.
Okay.
Now, in passing that information over, the Supervisor of Elections, he will actually order the names on the party list according to the number of votes they've received. So the list that might be before him or given originally or whatever, that will not be the one that we get. What we will get is whoever got most votes for the party will be at the top.
Right.
Whoever got second most be second, and so on all the way down. And the bottom one on the list will be the person who got least votes. Yeah? That's what we will receive. And from that point, then we will start the next process of allocating the seats.
Okay, then. Okay. My next question for you is, what is a threshold?
A threshold is a limit which, if you don't reach it, you're not elected. I'm sorry. Yes, that's correct. You don't stay in the election. You're eliminated.
Okay, then.
That's what a threshold is. And for Fiji, the threshold has been set at 5%. So that means that any party which does not get 5% of the vote, or any independent candidate, if an independent candidate does not get 5% of the vote, that person is eliminated.
Okay,
And
I'm going
also
to
the
hold you
party.
right there.
Yeah.
I'm going to hold you right there. I think we need to discuss further on this. We're going to go to a quick break, but when we come back, we'll be back in studio with Father David Arms. Welcome back to Gold FM Speak Your Mind. We're in studio with Father David Arms, Commission Member for the Electoral Commission. Father Arms, we're just discussing just earlier about the threshold that we have, and you said it stands at 5%?
That's correct.
Okay, yes. Can you please explain further about the threshold that we have?
Well, any party or any independent candidate who does not receive who receives less than 5% of the vote will be eliminated. That means, therefore, that person will not come into consideration for allocation of seats. It also means that the votes cast for that person are simply cast aside. They will not feature in any way for the rest of the allocation of seats. It's important to emphasize that a candidate for an individual party doesn't have to reach the threshold. It's only an independent candidate that has to reach the threshold. Once a candidate is a member of a party, he can get as many votes as he likes, and that's what he's obviously going to try for, or he can get as few. But that person still is on the party list, and it's whether the total party has reached the threshold or not. And then for an independent candidate, whether that independent candidate has reached the threshold or not.
Why do we have a threshold?
One could argue that it would be sort of fairer that everybody just gets the proportions. It's a proportional representation system, and so one would expect perhaps that, well, if it's proportional, that if you get 2% of the seats, then you get 2% of the votes, rather, you get 2% of the seats, and so on. However, it has been found, and is very common practice in many countries, to have a threshold. Although the purpose of proportional representation is indeed to give proper proportions, the problem can be, and has been in quite a few countries, that if you don't have a threshold, you can get many small parties or independent candidates elected. And although from the one hand that seems fair, if that's what the people want, on the other hand, it can have a very negative effect on forming a government.
Right.
That if, for instance, in our case, you'd need about 26 to have a majority in Parliament. Well, if you had a party getting 22 seats, perhaps, and wanted to form a government, then if there were a lot of individuals to try to make up the numbers, it could become very volatile, very unstable. That even if they form the government, once they're in government, still they'd have to keep pacifying, you might say, the individual candidates who joined the coalition, because if not, they'd pull out and all of a sudden the government's gone. So that is the reason why it has been done. And 5%, some people think it may be a little high. However, it is an acceptable threshold that is used, for instance, in Germany. It's also used 5% in New Zealand. And so sort of we're on a new ground by having this threshold.
Okay. How do you, the Electoral Commission, after all this, the tallying, the counting, how do you determine the number of seats each party gets?
That is covered in the electoral rebuy, Section 104. And Section 104 is actually a little bit difficult to read for the ordinary person, because it actually spells out in detail a rule known as the D'Hondt rule, and this rule is used to try to divide up the seats proportionally. The whole effort in a proportional representation system is, of course, that the number of votes a party gets as a percentage of the whole, that'll be the same percentage of seats. So if you get 40% of the votes, then you should get approximately 40% of the seats. 10% of the votes, 10% of the seats, and so on. And so this is a method of allocating those proportions. It's called the D'Hondt rule, because it's not always as easy as 40 and 10. It might be like 47.6 or 11.54% percent of the votes that you've got. And then how do you figure out, is it going to be 11 seats you get or 12 seats? And this D'Hondt rule helps to arrive at the fair number of seats for each party.
Okay. So could you explain, just simplify it for our listeners, what is exactly the D'Hondt rule?
Well, by the D'Hondt rule, what happens is that first of all, you get the totals for all the parties. And you put them in a line across the top perhaps of the page. And then you divide them. Let's say we've got a party with 100,000 votes. Yeah? We divide that figure 100,000 by 1, which means it's still 100,000. Then we divide it by 2, so we put 50,000 under that. Then we divide by 3, so then it's 33,333. Then we divide it by 4, so that's 25,000. And we go right down to 50 if the party is running 50 candidates. And the same for another party. Let's say the next party had 60,000. So then we write under that, we divide by 1, that's 60,000. We divide by 2, that's 30,000. We divide by 3, that's 20,000, and so on. And then another party, let's say it's 36,000, smaller one. So we do again. Divide by 1, we divide by 2, that's 18,000, and then divide by 3, 12,000. Now, if we've got all those figures, then the next thing what the Commission has to do, it looks at all the figures and picks out the highest ones. In fact, it picks out the highest 50.
Right.
So after doing all that division work, there's all these figures on the page. Can't show it on radio, but it's not really all that complicated. But then the Electoral Commission goes and looks at the highest one, which let's say in this case is 100,000, circles that. Then it circles the next one.
This is within the party, within each party or
each
individual?
Each party, like 100,000 was for one party. And then we divided it all right down 50 times. Then the next party was 60,000. So we divided that one right down 50 times. And the next one is 36,000, divided that 50 times, and so on. And so we look, wherever the figures are, we take the highest. Now, the highest ones are going to be at the top. So we took 100,000 be the first one. 60,000 was the next one, Party B, Party A, Party B. Now, the next one, Party C, was 36,000. But that doesn't get the next seat because the next highest number, as I said, was 50,000.
Right.
Because after 100,000, we divided that by 2. So we go back. So if there's only 3 seats, Party A gets 2, and Party B gets 1.
Right.
And if there's 4 seats, then we go the next figure, actually next highest figure of the ones I mentioned was 36,000, which is Party C. So then we have two seats for Party A, 1 for B, 1 for C. Then we have next seat, the next number, highest number is 33,333. Nice, easy figure. And that's Party A. So that party now has 3 seats, Party B and C, 1 each. Then the next number is 30,000, which belongs to Party B. And so we have Party A has 3 seats, Party B now has 2 seats, Party C 1. So we've got up to 6.
Right.
Now, like we go on and on like that, the Electoral Commission goes right up to 50. And then we've got all these circled numbers, and then we look at each party's list of figures, and we say, well, how many circles are in this party, and how many circles for that party, and how many circles for that one? And so we end up with the proper designation of the number of seats for each party.
Okay. Well, I think you've broken it down really nicely for us.
Well, it's a pretty on radio. It's pretty hard.
On radio, it is hard. Yes.
Yes, the visual is easier to perceive. But I hope that gives some idea as to how it. And at the end of it, then the Electoral Commission simply adds up those circles. So let's say Party A, got 12 seats. So it writes 12 at the bottom. Now the party got, say, 5 seats, and the other one got 2 seats, or whatever, 3. And so we have those number of seats then, 12, 5, and 3, whatever it is. And so we know at that stage how many seats each party gets.
Okay. I'm going to hold you right there.
Yes.
We're going to go into a break. And when we come back, we'll discuss this further. Welcome back to another segment of Gold FM Speak Your Mind. We're in studio today with Commission member Father David Arms from the Electoral Commission. And we've been discussing how the results and allocation of seats done by the Electoral Commission. Father Arms, we're now, after a party has been allotted a certain number of seats, how is it determined which candidates of the party will occupy them?
Yes, so first of all, I'd like to just apologize if it seemed a bit complicated, all the figures I gave for the last section. But it is actually quite an easy process to perform, and we're not sort of having jitters about it as an Electoral Commission. There'll be we don't foresee any difficulty in actually going through that numerical process. It is actually quite easy, and it will much easier, of course, when you have charts or something to display. And there will be also the electoral office, the elections office will be putting things on television where it will be easy to actually see how it works much easier rather than by just word of mouth. However, I just wanted to give some idea for radio listeners as to how it would work. So then, having got to that stage whereby we know how many seats each party has got, we then have to allot those seats to particular individuals of each party. So I took as an example earlier, I said Party A perhaps had 12 seats and Party B had 6 seats. So what we do is go back to the list that was given to us by the Supervisor of Elections.
Right.
He gave us the list of all the totals of all the candidates of each party, but in an order and descending order, so that the top one had the most votes, right down through the whole list to the bottom one who had least votes for each party. Now, what the Electoral Commission does, since Party A got 12 seats, it looks at that list and picks the 12 names at the top of the list.
Okay.
Because those 12 names are the ones who got most votes for that party.
Right.
So it simply says, these are the 12 elected to Parliament. Then it goes to the next party, who were the top 5 or whatever it was, at the top of that list. And so those 5 will go in. So if the party was running the whole 50, then those 5 go in, the other 45 have missed out.
Okay.
And so on. So it's actually quite a simple process and a fair process, is because the people going in are determined by the electors. They determine the voters. They determine not only how many voters vote for this party, that party, determining the number of seats, but they also have a say as to which members actually get in.
Right. So it does mean that there will be candidates who might get in, but with not many votes?
That is possible. There are all sorts of possibilities. I mean, you could have somebody, I took a party, say 100,000. It's possible that, say, the leader of the party, very popular, got 60,000 of those. And then somebody else popular got about 20, and then 10. And then, since I said there was 12 people got that party, but if you're down to, you got 100,000 votes all told, and your leader got 60,000, well then, by the time you get down number 12, that person might only have 300 or 400. Who knows? So that, although of course that would mean that the other 38 didn't get very many. So I doubt very much whether it'll be a very low number, but it could vary. In some cases, you'll find that the top people in the party, quite a few of them got quite high results, and others it will be one person a lot and then a big drop, and it could be there could be a series of drops. It all depends on the popularity of the particular candidates, and it can depend also somewhat on the campaign strategy of the parties. Some parties may prefer to push certain candidates quite heavily and leave the others to do as best they can. Others may like to give their candidates sort of various campaign areas which are more or less equal in number and see how they go. It's really, there's quite a lot of room for variety, not only in the results, but the variety in the way parties handle the situation.
Right. So we've been talking so much about the candidates, so one could easily say that with this year's elections, our focus is mainly on the candidates. It's not so much the party, it's the candidates.
No, not really.
Yes.
That is that perhaps because we're dealing with the numbers, it might look that way a little. But as I said earlier, it's quite important to realize that when you're voting for a candidate, you're voting also for a party, except if you're voting for an independent candidate. And you might say the independent candidate is his or her own party. It's like a little party of its own. But no, because as I said, in fact, you could vote for a candidate and that candidate not get in, but your vote is still counting for the party. So it is quite important that you know all voters should know what they're doing. So when they're voting, they're not just voting for the candidate; they're also voting for the party. And if in point of fact they're not even too worried about which candidate, they really want this party, but they don't really matter which one. Well, then they still have to look. They have to choose one, and so they choose whichever they please, and by doing so, they're voting for the party.
Okay, then. If we can just go back to the, you were saying that the Electoral Commission will be releasing, not the Electoral Commission, the Elections Office, sorry, will be releasing video footage of how all of this is going to work out? As in the numbers you were explaining, it's a bit, I think for our listeners, it will be a bit confusing for them, but you will be releasing video footage, presentations.
Yes, there will be, there's certainly presentations being made on that to various groups, and it will also, I'm sure, be put also out on TV, and we have also circulated some pamphlets, you might say, or sheets of paper with examples on. So we will certainly, it's part of our education task is to educate people also on the counting as well as on the rest. But it is a bit less important really for the ordinary voter than how to vote. That is the more important thing, especially at this stage, is that the registration is over. But now the question is to make sure that people know how to vote and to vote correctly.
Okay, then. We're just going to take a quick break right now, but we'll be right back again after. Welcome back to Gold FM Speak Your Mind. We're in studio with Father David Arms, the Commission Member for the Electoral Commission. Now, Father Arms, the last figures released just before voter registration ended was at 575,000. What happens if a person has registered but they decide not to vote? Could you explain, is there a penalty? Will they be given a fine if they don't vote? I know there's a lot of discussions going around. Quite a few people have said that have told other people if they have registered but they don't vote, they're going to get penalized for it. Is this true?
No, that is not true. First of all, you don't even have to register. That's not compulsory to register. But it is very commendable that so many people have registered, and it shows a real interest in the democratic process, and it's very encouraging. The number is extremely high, 92%. Even in countries which do have compulsory registration, they often don't get that much. So it is very a good thing, I think. It's also, there's no compulsion whatsoever to vote. And there's no penalties to be applied if people don't vote. So people must feel perfectly free on that.
Right.
However, I'm not encouraging you not to vote. On the very contrary.
Oh no, we want them to vote.
It's a civic responsibility, really. There may be reasons why people may decide not to vote, but I think on the whole we would really try to urge people to vote. They're registered now, and it's an important time in the country's history, so we would certainly encourage people to vote, yes.
Right. Now we know that there's a 48-hour blackout period for campaigning. This is just before polling day. Does this mean that during this blackout period, does this mean that all campaigning materials, such as banners and posters that we may see around, even ads that are on TV and radio, do they have to be removed immediately?
I believe
especially
so.
visual ones out in public.
I believe so. That's what the 40 hours, 8 hours means. That it is the 40 hours. It is a blackout period, and so these things do have to be removed. Yes.
Okay. This is in the lead up to polling day. So also in the lead up to polling day, will the media be allowed to discuss the elections in the lead up to the polling day during this 48-hour blackout?
There is a danger in that. I think that it could amount to campaigning again or getting onto those sort of issues. So I think that obviously the media have to say something within 48 hours, but I think they'd have to be very careful about going into anything that could be construed as campaigning or supporting this party or that. It would have to be extremely sort of neutral reporting. It is a blackout period, yeah.
Right. Okay, then. Is there anything further that you'd like, going back to the allocation of seats? We were discussing something earlier. You said you had something more to share? Oh,
yes, just that, as I said, it is quite a simple process, that part. The difficult part really is for the supervisor and his staff who have to collect all these votes from all around the country and add them all up and make sure there are no errors. As I said earlier, that could take would take probably a couple of days and could take longer. The job of the Electoral Commission, once we are given the results by the supervisor, that could be over in an hour or two. So there wouldn't be much length of time used there. So that should be quite quick once those final results are out. And indeed, if they're sort of as these sort of results become known or people figure it out from what's being displayed in the tallying centre, it's quite likely that some parties or some electoral experts will actually come up with the results even before we do. And that's okay. There's no problem with that. We have to proceed slowly, however, and carefully, since we can't afford to make a mistake.
No.
But parties that can, and I think many of them are very astute at this, and they should be able to come up with sort of results, pretty good results too, very quickly. So we're not dragging our feet if we take a bit longer, but just making sure that it is done without mistake.
So so you're looking at about 2 days.
We would hope to have it in 2 days, but it could go up to 4. But that the main problem there, I think, would be, not problem, but the main centre for counting is very complex, with all these different results coming in at once and putting them all together. So that will take some time, and we hope there's no hitch. We will be being helped, of course, by computer equipment. But one has to make sure too that computer equipment is functioning, of course, first, but also that it is safe, that there can be no tampering. So there has to be checks and counter checks on that. As results come in, they will not just be entered once, but entered twice, so that instead of with connections, so that if the 2 entries are incorrect, if somebody makes a mistake, that there will be an automatic buzzer or something that sort of will indicate that a mistake has been made and can be corrected quickly.
Right.
Because you don't want to have the elections going on and then find that, there was a mistake made way back. So no, if there's a mistake, you'd want to find it out as soon as possible.
Right.
And so there's all sorts of helps there that will be there, and so hopefully it'll run smoothly.
And this is, you will all be, when the commission meets together to allocate the seats, this will all be done at the Suva office?
Yes, it'll all be done in Suva. There'll be the central tallying centre, and we may be in a slightly different location, but at least all these things will be viewable. I mean, the media will be informed.
The Central Tallying Centre will be is it the elections office, or is it a separate area altogether?
It may be a separate area.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure of the detail of that yet, nor of where we as the Electoral Commission will actually do the allocation of seats. But that will be finalised certainly, and people will be able to view there'll be television screens and God knows what around to sort of help people to actually see things as it's progressing. And so none of it is being done in private. It'll all be done in public and trying to be as transparent and clear as possible.
So when the announcements are made with regards to which candidate is being allocated the seat, which party has more seats, that will come directly from the commission chair.
Yes, the Electoral Commission.
He is the final word, not from anyone else.
No.
Okay, then. So the public needs to be fully aware that the final word comes from him with regards to who is getting the seat, which party has more seats, and not from anyone else.
That's right.
Right. Okay, then. Is there anything more that you'd like to share with us? Maybe with regards to what the Electoral Commission is doing right now?
The Electoral Commission at the moment is, you might say, sort of overseeing things. Just as I am here on radio today, the Electoral Commission is at times giving other interviews or on TV, and also having public meetings. Tonight, I think some of us will be meeting in the Civic Auditorium
Tonight?
Yes.
What time tonight?
6 o'clock, 6 to 7.
This is open to the public?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so the public can come by, ask whatever questions that they may have for the Electoral Commission.
Yes, and so there will be other such things that we will perform, because voter education is part of our task as well. But the main task really is one of overseeing. We have responsibility for the whole thing, so we do have to, although we're not the ones with the hands-on necessarily, but still we do have to just check that everything is going fine.
Yes.
For instance, we've had meetings with the Commissioner of Police,
right,
and who has been very helpful in making sure the security arrangements are going to be fine for transferring materials and so on, and also at polling stations. They've gone to a lot of detailed planning on that, and that has been very, so far at least, been very successful. And then we've also met with bus operators and other public transport to try to work out a system whereby, being a public holiday, we don't want sort of everything to just go as if it's on a Sunday.
You need to get them to the polling station. Yes.
So there has to be a compromise between, can't just be like any other public holiday, but then it's not an ordinary working day either, so we can't be having buses running empty either.
Yes.
We've got to sort of work that out. So there's been good discussions on all those sort of details, and so we've been involved in that. And there's other things too, of course, the paraphernalia, the ballot boxes and the ink and all these things. And also keeping abreast of the international community, which has been helping us, and trying to liaise with those as well. So it is actually a part-time job, but at times it doesn't seem like very part-time. It seems more like full-time.
Well, Father Arms, thank you so much for coming on the show today. We've reached the end of another segment of Gold FM Speak Your Mind, but we thank you so much for coming on the show, and we wish you and the Commission all the very best with your work that you're doing in the lead up to our first general elections on September 17th.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to help, and I hope I haven't confused people, but rather clarified things. At least I've tried to, and I hope everybody has a good election.
Thank you so much.